Hi, I'm Allison, and in this video, we're going to talk a little bit about how to sequence a yoga class. So I say that sequencing a yoga class is a lot like telling a story. If you were going to tell someone a story and you're jumping from one thought to the next, the person might think, what's the point of this story? And they're not quite following. And the same is true when you're teaching a practice, that if you're jumping from one pose to the next and they don't go together seamlessly, then it can feel confusing to the body and it can make the mind a little bit scattered. And the whole point of yoga is to make the body feel calm, the mind to be focused. So we want to think about how we're putting a class together and not just putting a bunch of random asana together. So the first thing is you want to think about what is the intention of the practice? Is it going to be more energizing and invigorating? Is it going to be more calming and soothing? Is it going to be more balancing? And then from there, you think about your peak pose. What are you building up to? So today, in this short practice, and again, this is just an introduction, we're going to focus on dancer pose. So first I want to think about, well, what kind of pose is dancer pose? Well, I know that one, dancer is a balancing pose. So I'm going to need to do things to prepare for balancing. But what else is happening in dancer pose? Well, one, we know that we're reaching back and we're grabbing hold of the foot, so I need to stretch the hip flexors. Me reaching my arms back, I have to open up the chest. And it is a back bend. So these are the things that I'm going to be focusing on when I'm putting this sequence together. And then I also think about what is the quality of dancer pose. If I'm working towards this big balance, maybe my theme is balance. Maybe my focus is opening up the heart, feeling stable and grounded. I wouldn't have a theme about being calm and quiet because those two things don't really go together. So you're thinking about the theme, you're thinking about the energy, and then what physically needs to be prepared to get them ready for dancer pose or whatever it is that you're working on. So I'm going to take you through a short practice to give you an idea of what I'm talking about. So maybe we start in Sukhasana, a comfortable seated position. And typically, if I'm teaching an hour-long practice, I want to spend at least a couple minutes at the beginning getting them checked in with their body. How is their body feeling? How is their breath moving? What are they bringing onto the mat with them that day? So every single practice should start with this initial check-in. And then once you've gone through the check-in, you ask them, or maybe you focus on, today we're focusing on opening the heart, or today we're focusing on balance. And once you give that theme, you stick with that same theme throughout the practice. You don't keep changing it. Just like your story, you want to stay on point and not jump from one thought to the next. So you do your opening meditation, you might have them focus on their breath, you're focusing on opening the heart, whatever it might be. Then when I start the movement, I'm focusing on what needs to be prepared and open for dancer pose. We talked about hip flexors and shoulders. So perhaps instead of me sitting in Sukhasana, which is this externally rotated hip position, I might take them into a deer pose. So we would start with the feet planted out in front of us, placing the hands on the shins, and maybe doing a couple rounds of a cat-cow, lifting heart on inhale, curling on exhale, just to start to warm up the spine. Remember that when you're sequencing a practice, we want to start with dynamic movement. So we're not doing long holds, but we're starting to warm up the body and prepare for more advanced shapes. Then we can take the hands behind, maybe do a little swish from side to side. Again, lots of dynamic flowing movement in the opening warm-up. Now, I'll take it into my 90-90 or my deer pose because now I'm starting to open up the hip flexor. I'll take the arms up and overhead and I start to move into the shoulder. So I know that eventually I'm going to be wanting to take my arm back to grab the foot. So you're going to see a lot of movement opening up through the shoulder. But I love to give my students lots of options. I don't just say, boom, hold this position, because everyone needs something different. So I say, you could reach the arm behind you. You could take big circles or wrap the arm behind. So in everything that you offer and every shape that you come into, try to give at least 3 or 4 different options so everyone can find what feels good for them. So we spend maybe a minute or so moving the shoulder, and we can float the arms up, maybe take the hands behind, opening up the chest, and I could give the option to lift the hips up, so I'm opening up into the front of the hip. And then I lower the hips and I swing the legs over to the other side. And again, I'm doing the same thing, opening up the shoulder, move around. What feels good in your body? Is there a difference between side to side? So there's a lot of check-in. Maybe if my theme was balance, do you notice the balance from right to left, or does it feel out of balance? So you move around, maybe like a minute or so, and then taking the arms up, hands behind, open up the chest. They can stay there, or maybe lifting up. And on an exhale to release. When we're sequencing, we want to move from base pose to base pose. So I was just seated, so that's going to be my base pose. And now I want to move on into a tabletop, which is now my second base pose. I wouldn't want to lay down because it would feel choppy to be seated, to lay down, only to quickly come back up again. So I'm moving from one thing to the next. So my next base is my tabletop. And so think about, in a tabletop position, what can you do to open up the hip flexors, to move the spine, open up the shoulders? So we can come back to our cat-cow. Inhale, lift the heart. Exhale, curl. And you can give them options to swish and sway. And then from here, what I might do, because I'm thinking about what does dancer look like and how can I recreate that shape based on where I am right now. So there's a couple different options. One option that I could take is coming into a modified side plank, opening up, lifting the leg, grab hold of the foot, and then kick the foot back. So I'm getting the shoulder opening, I'm getting the hip flexor opening, and I'm getting the back bend all in one. And it looks very similar to dancer. Remember that you're giving options, so they don't have to grab their foot. They can simply move the arm around, maybe nod the chin up or down. And then we come back into our tabletop, sway it out, and you would do the same thing on the other side. So I'll just turn around so that you can see the front of me, and they can circle the arm. Maybe they lift the leg. If comfortable, grabbing the foot. Every class that you teach, you're imagining that you're teaching multiple levels at once, because the reality is you are teaching multiple levels at once. Everybody is going to be at a different place in their practice. Once you come back into your tabletop, what else could you do in this tabletop position as the base? So maybe from my base of tabletop, I could move into a low lunge. And I step the foot forward. I could bring the hands to the thigh, maybe start to rock in and out. Dynamic movements. Our static long holds, that's at the end of the practice. And then I rock my weight forward. I find what feels comfortable. And what would I do with the arms here? It wouldn't necessarily make sense if I were to take my arms in eagle, because that's not the direction that I'm going for. I want to open up. So maybe I'm taking the arms into a cactus position, or maybe I clasp the hands behind my back and open up the chest. Taking several breaths and then releasing down, and you might take a half split. So think about you're moving towards bigger shapes, but then you always want to give a moment to pause and to counter. So even though I might be adding a lot of back bends in the practice, I want to give adequate time for a forward fold. And I shift forward, come back into my base, into my tabletop, shake it out. And then we move to the other side, stepping the left foot forward, hands to thigh, and again, rocking back and forth. You could do this with the hands on the floor. So there's lots of different options. And I want you to keep in mind that there's not just one way to move into dancer. There's so many different ways that you can move into it, but you want to think of what are the primary focal points. Then I rock my weight forward. If I took the cactus, maybe do the cactus again, or hands clasped behind, just something to open up the chest as if you were going to reach back and grab your foot. And then on exhale, release the hands, take it back into your tabletop. And then maybe now you move into down dog if that feels appropriate. And in your down dog, you can pedal the heels, shake the head, invite whatever movement feels comfortable. And then on an exhale, we'll walk the feet forward, coming into Uttanasana. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, fold. Inhale, we rise, take the arms up and overhead. And exhale, hands to prayer, Tadasana. So in the practice, I think of those natural moments of pause. So when I'm in Tadasana for the first time, or when I come into a child's pose, or maybe when I have them lay on their belly, that there's a moment to pause and I can remind them of what the intention of the practice is. So it's not like I just say, oh, today we're focusing on heart opening, and then never mention it again until the very end. I want to sprinkle the theme throughout the class. So as we're standing in our mountain pose, I might say something to the effect of lifting up through the chest, opening up, standing tall, opening the heart, breathing into that heart space, breathing in compassion, or whatever you wanted to talk about in relationship to the heart. Then from our mountain pose, we're going to move into the flow. And so the way I teach, it's kind of considered a ladder flow. So I start with a base, and then I add another rung, and I add another rung. This is a short practice, so I'll take you through 2 rungs of the ladder, but you'll get an idea that each time I go through the flow, I'm building upon what we've done the last round. So starting in Tadasana, inhale, arms overhead, and exhale, release down into a forward fold. Inhale, halfway lift, lengthen the spine. Exhale, plant the palms, step back into plank. Because I'm teaching multiple layers, I give the option to have the legs straight in plank or the knees down. Shifting your weight forward, exhale, lower down onto the belly. Inhale, lift into your cobra. You might move in and out. Inhale as you lift. Exhale as you lower. Flowing back and forth with your breath. On an exhale, forehead down. Inhale, you can push up through table or through plank. I'm giving layers. And exhale into a down dog, or maybe they stay in a tabletop. Inhale, right leg lifts up. Exhale, step the foot forward, and we're going to drop that back knee to the floor. So you can certainly do a high lunge, but I'm going to keep knees down for this practice. We're going to bring our hands to our thigh as we lift up into our low lunge. Let the arms relax down by your side. Find your balance here. On an inhale, the arms are going to float up. Exhale, the left hand is going to slide down the left leg, right arm reaching up. Maybe you gaze up towards the ceiling, or you might stay more neutral. On an exhale, hands come down. You might shift back, giving them a half split to kind of calm down after that back bend. Inhale, bend into the knees, step back into plank, and lower all the way down to the belly. Now, I said earlier, you focus on the shape of dancer, and how can you recreate that shape in different foundations? So now my base is laying on the floor. So I can take what I call the belly dancer, bending the left knee, reach back, grab hold of the foot. Right hand can stay close to you or extend forward. Maybe lift the arm, maybe lift the thigh. So there's 3 or 4 options there. You take several breaths and exhale to release. Inhale, push up in table where they could stay in table or tuck the toes. Exhale into down dog. Breathing in your down dog. And when you're ready, inhale, left leg lifts up. Exhale, step the foot in between the hands and drop the back knee. Bring the hands to the thigh, wailing the foot forward. So when you're a newer teacher, it's important to try not to do too many things on one side because that's a lot to remember. So usually I'll keep it to maybe like 2 or 3 things. And then once I feel comfortable, then start to add more to the flow. So this is a pretty basic sequence. We're going to inhale the arms up. Exhale, take the right hand, slide it down the right leg. You can stay neutral or maybe lift the heart, moving towards that back bend. Always reminding your students to breathe. On an exhale, hands can cartwheel down. Straighten the leg into that half split. Pose, counter, pose, counter. Inhale, bend into the knee. Take it back either into a table or a plank position. Shift your weight forward. Exhale, lower down onto your belly. Bending the knee, reaching back, grabbing hold of the foot. Left hand can stay where it is or maybe extend it forward with the option to lift up so I'm in this dancer shape. Taking several breaths here. And then when you're ready, press up. And maybe take a moment in child's pose, depending on the level, and just really tuning in to what's going on with your students. You might have an idea of what you think the practice should look like, but then there's the reality of what's happening in the room. So maybe you're noticing that your students are struggling. So you have to adapt. You have to be able to switch gears based on what's happening in front of you. So if they're looking good, we can come back into our down dog, take several breaths, walk the feet forward, inhale up, exhale, fold, inhale, arms up, and exhale, hands to heart center. Relax the arms, shake it out. And that would be like the first rung of the ladder. How does that feel? Good. Now, maybe I can take them into dancer pose, maybe the first dancer, just to see how it feels. We've opened the shoulders. We've opened up the front of the body. We've done some back bends. When you get to the peak, or maybe you have a couple peaks in the practice, it shouldn't come as a surprise. It should feel very familiar to the body. The body should be like, of course, I've been doing this the whole practice. I am so ready for this. So from my Tadasana, I kick the right foot back, grab hold of the foot, and float the arm up. And level 1, layer 1, they stay there. Or if they wanted to go deeper, they could kick the leg back, coming into dancer. And maybe we do it a couple times, but this is our first round. We take several breaths. And on an exhale, we shake it out. And then we'll do the same thing on the other side. Floating the arm up, you find your focal point. Anytime we're doing any kind of balancing, we always want to give the option to use the wall for support. And then release, come back to center. Now we're going to go into our second rung of the ladder. Inhale, arms up. Exhale, release into a fold. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, plant the palms, step back, plank. Here you might tell your students to move through a vinyasa, or maybe they want to skip it and go straight to down dog. So I'm always giving layers. Feel free to flow through a vinyasa. Maybe you're adding up dog. Maybe they skip all of that and go straight into down dog. Inhale, right leg floats up. Exhale, step the foot forward, drop the back knee. Now I'm going to build upon what I did last time. So I'm going to encourage my students to grab a blanket and put the blanket underneath the knee. Hands to the thigh, lift the heart. Let's take the left arm up, slide it down. They can stay there, or maybe they reach back, grab hold of the foot. Right hand can stay on the thigh, or they could float the arm up and overhead. Staying neutral, or maybe more of a back bend, lifting the chest. So you can see that this is all moving in the same shape, moving deeper and deeper and deeper. Exhale, release the foot gently. Hands come down. shift it back. Rock it forward. They can move through a tabletop, a child's pose, a down dog, a flow. You're giving multiple options, and they meet in down dog. Inhale, left leg lifts. Exhale, step the foot forward and drop the knee down. Bring your hands to your thigh. Find your balance here. If they don't want to grab the foot, they can stay here. Or maybe they bend the back knee, grab hold of the foot. Left arm floats up. They can stay neutral or lift the heart. Taking several breaths. And then exhale, release. Shift forward, come back into table. Take the vinyasa if you want. So notice that I did dancer prior to grabbing hold of the foot in that lunge, because that lunge is actually more challenging to reach back from that position, and it's a balance there too. So think about the order in which things should go, which is a little bit harder, and move that later on in the sequence. We'll come into our down dog. We'll walk our feet forward. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, fold. Inhale, arms up. And exhale, hands to heart. And then from there, I could do a second round of dancer. So to make it a little bit more challenging, maybe this time I attempt to grab hold of the foot with both hands. And I could kick the foot back, opening up the chest, maybe looking up, hinging forward slightly if that feels comfortable. So I'm just continuously building upon my theme. Shake it out and do the other side. Grabbing hold of the foot if you can with both hands. Kicking the foot back, opening up the chest, maybe hinging forward slightly. You're giving several layers. Of course, they can use the wall if they'd like. Release, shake it out, let it go. On an inhale, arms come up. Exhale, release down into the fold. Step back, they can take the vinyasa, drop the knees, and from here, maybe a child's pose. So you're giving them a moment to rest and to notice how that flow felt in their body. So we slowly built from base, seated, to base, tabletop, to stand, and then through that vinyasa. Now, once I've gone through my peak, now I'm going to start the cool down process. So if you have an entire hour class, think about your opening warm-up or your opening meditation is maybe like 5 minutes. The warm-up, I'm a big fan of long warm-ups, so maybe 15, 20 minutes of warming up. So now we're 25 minutes into the class. Then about 15 minutes of the stronger flow, and then 5 minutes of that peak expiration, whatever that might be. So now you're about 45 minutes in, and then you're starting that cool down. So an hour is actually a pretty short class. So this is why when you are sequencing the class, you're not trying to fill as many asana as you possibly can. You want to be really mindful of what you're choosing and why you're choosing it. Either you're building up to where you're going, or you're cooling down from something you've just done. So now that we've done our peak, we want to move into our cool down. We've spent the practice opening up, back bends, shoulder opening, hip flexor opening. Now I want to cool them down with more forward folds. So I could bring them into a pigeon pose. Since I'm back in my base tabletop, we could come into pigeon and get a fold there and breathe into the pigeon, bringing my body into flexion. And I'm also getting some external rotation of the hip, which we didn't do too much of in the practice. Now that we're in the cool down, it's going to be longer holds. So I didn't hold that for very long. But if you had a full hour or longer, this is the time where you let them settle into the cool down, breathing into each pose for maybe like a minute or more. From there, I could bring them to sit, and there's not just one way to do this, but I might move into some forward folds to counter those back bends. So maybe you do a Janu Shirshasana, holding each for a minute. Maybe you do a Paschimottanasana. Several breaths. And once I've done my seated base, then I would finally come down to recline. When I come down to recline, I'm not going to come back up again until the end of the practice. When I come to that reclined position, maybe I'll do a little gentle twisting because I didn't do a whole lot of twisting in the practice. So I might end with maybe some windshield wipers, maybe a double leg twist, obviously holding each side for a while. Maybe an Apanasana to press the low back to the floor, butterfly, happy baby, all the things. And usually by the end of the practice, I give them like a minute or so. Hey, do what you need that would feel good in your body. And then from there, I'd move them into Shavasana. And you want to save at least 5 minutes for Shavasana. You don't want it to be an afterthought. You don't want to just have them in there for 1 minute and pull them back out. Like they've earned their Shavasana. Let them settle in and feel the effects of what they've done. Maybe you take them through a guided meditation that makes sense with the theme. So focusing on the heart center, focusing on compassion, love, whatever you were focusing on in the practice. You take them through some lovely imagery, but then also giving them time for silence. We don't want to talk the entire time. So if Shavasana is 5 minutes, maybe you talk for half of that and you're quiet for half of that. After the resting Shavasana, you gradually bring them up to a seated position, nice and slow. Have them find whatever position feels comfortable in their body. And then have at least 2-3 minutes of some sort of closing meditation. Maybe it's breath work. Maybe you do a mantra practice, a mudra practice, trying to weave in some of the subtler elements of yoga and reminding our students that asana is only one small part of the practice. That we want to give lots of time for stillness, for self-reflection, for tuning in. And then when you're done with the practice, your students will be like, that was awesome. That felt so good because it made sense in their body, right? That we moved gracefully step by step in a way that made sense. And your students are going to come up to you and be like, wow, I've never been able to get into that before. It's like, yes, because we prepared appropriately for it. So if you're interested in learning more about yoga sequencing in our 300-hour, I have a whole class, like 36 hours, where we talk about nothing but yoga sequencing. So I hope to see you there. Let me know if you have any questions.